Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, and I'm excited to talk about optimizing your tank levels with Aquafenix Scientific's Tank Scan. This innovative technology keeps an eye on tank levels in real time, reducing downtime and optimizing supply management. What if you had complete visibility over your tank levels, ensuring you never run low or overstock? With Tank Scan, you can. Streamline your operations and save resources by achieving low waste, lower cost, and a more efficient supply chain. Aquafenix Scientific's focus on connecting water treatment with technology means they're always pushing the boundaries of what's possible. By integrating Tank Scan into your operations, you're not just improving your tank management, you're enhancing your entire water treatment ecosystem. Ready to take your water management to the next level? Head over to scalinguph2o.com/APS. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/APS. Aquafenix Scientific, your one-stop solution for smart water and chemical management. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation, it's Trace Blackmore, and if there's one thing we know as water treaters, it's that success comes from building strong partnerships. And that's exactly what North Metal and Chemical Company is all about. My friends at North Metal are committed to creating long-term relationships built on trust, reliability, and innovation. Their industry-specific expertise means they understand your challenges and work tirelessly to provide great Northwest products along with a personal touch. With dedicated technical support, North Metal and Chemical Company stands out as a partner who truly cares about your success in the industrial water treatment space. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/north and start building a partnership you can count on. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/north. North Metal and Chemical Company, serving the water treatment industry since 1921. Welcome to the Scaling Up H₂O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H₂O podcast. And Nation, I am so excited. Next week is the Association of Water Technologies. And folks, I love going to industrial water treatment conferences. I don't think it's a secret. I grew up in the AWT. I was president of AWT several years ago. I absolutely love the Association of Water Technologies. And next week is one of my favorite weeks out of the year because I get to see so many people that are part of the Scaling Up Nation. And I hope I get to see you next week. Now, I will say I love going to all industrial water treatment conventions because there are so many people in the Scaling Up Nation. I'm always running into somebody that says they're listening to the podcast, they have ideas about the podcast, maybe they want to be on the podcast or they know somebody who should be on the podcast. I love going to all the industrial water treatment conferences for that reason because I get to meet you. But next week, I get to meet so many people. It seems like the majority of where I see Scaling Up Nation members, where I might see 100 or so at another convention, it's almost like the entire convention of AWT is part of the Scaling Up Nation. And I just love that. I look at that as an entire week next week where we get to celebrate being part of the Scaling Up Nation. We get to celebrate being part of the industrial water treatment industry. We get to celebrate the friendships that we have. We get to celebrate all the new information that we're going to learn next week, the new relationships we're going to form next week. Folks, I cannot wait until next week. Next week is going to be fantastic, and I hope that you are going to be there. Now, I mentioned a lot of things that I'm excited about, but the thing I'm most excited about is I get to see so many people that I know next week. I have so many friends in the industrial water treatment industry. And most of them are going to be there next week. It's going to be a fantastic week. I can't wait to see all of them. I can't wait to see all of you. And speaking of friends, one of my friends that you all know as a friend is James McDonald. He's going to be there next week. But here he is right now with a brand new What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what do you call the physical property of matter that is defined as the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of a unit mass of a substance by 1 degree? The answer is specific heat capacity. Common units of measure include joules per kilogram degree Celsius or British thermal units per pound degree Fahrenheit. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Well, thank you, James, and can't wait to see you next week. And I just cannot wait until next week. So excited about the AWT. Now, if you are wondering if I'm going to have buttons next week, of course, I am going to have scaling up buttons. We buy these guys in bulk so we can bring them to conferences like the AWT. And the button is so much more than a button. I want to talk about it because it has become a pop water treatment culture icon. So what you need to do is you need to get a button. People will bring their buttons with them. I've seen people with 7 buttons on their lanyard. They have a new one each and every time they come to the convention. Don't worry, if you don't have one, I will have plenty there, and it's not just a button. So first off, where do you wear your scaling up H₂O button? Well, you wear it right on your lanyard, right above your name tag, so that way people can see it. Now, why has this become so popular? Well, the main reason behind this button is it is a networking tool. And I want you to use this button to meet new people because it has a special power. It is an ice-breaking tool because how do you meet new people? Because that can be awkward. Oh my gosh, I don't know this person. I want to introduce myself, but I don't know how to start. Well, the button does all of that for you because you're going to see so many other people wearing the Scaling Up H₂O button. You're going to be able to walk up to them and you're like, I listened to that podcast too. And boom, right there, you could hear the cracking. The ice just broke, and now you have something to talk about. Folks, it is a magic button because it breaks the ice just that easy, and there have been so many new relationships that have been formed just over that button. So here's the thing. I am bringing pounds of buttons. And I know it's pounds because I have a special button suitcase that I travel with to these shows, and I don't want to take all those pounds back. Normally, when I fly out of the Atlanta airport, I am right on the line with how heavy my suitcase is because of all those buttons. And I want to bring back things from the conference, not the buttons. So I am planning on giving out thousands of buttons this year. So make sure you grab one. If you've got some team members, some people at home that listen to the podcast, or maybe there's somebody you want to tell about the podcast and you want to give them a button to remind them to listen to it, by all means, let me or anybody you see, there are going to be several people there that are handing out buttons. Let us know that, hey, I'd like to take 10 home so everybody on my team can have one. Folks, we would love to accommodate that for you. Like I said, the button has become a water treatment pop culture icon, and I want to make sure that you have at least one. Maybe you're one of those people that like to display every one that we have ever produced. And we've had a couple of logo changes. So if you have the scaling up button from a couple of years ago, you've seen a couple of modernizing in our logo changing. And it's just a lot of fun to do. So I hope that you wear your button. I hope to give you a button. I hope to go home with less buttons. And I hope that that is the ice-breaking tool to lead you to that next new friendship. Maybe it's a friendship like one that I have. Maybe you like with Mark Lewis, who's been on this podcast several times. Maybe it's like the one I have with James McDonald, who is a contributor to so much in our industry. Oh my gosh, James does so much. And he contributes each and every week to this podcast. And he has been doing that for years. And he's become part of this podcast. All of that is because I went to a conference like you're going to next week, and I met somebody new. You never know who you're going to meet. And use the ice-breaking tool, use the button to help you meet that next person. And Nation, I'm really excited to talk to you. I always get new information about how people are using the podcast, things that they've tried from the podcast. Of course, I get show ideas. Trace, have you ever considered doing a show on this? Or Trace, I would love to be on the show. Will you interview me? Or can you interview this person? I think the Scaling Up Nation needs to know more about this person's particular expertise. My goal next week is just to have so much fun at AWT, but I'm going to walk away with so much content to bring to all of you out there in the Scaling Up Nation from this conference, because you're going to give it to me next week. So if you see me walking around, give me all that information. I want to make sure that I am always ready with new information, with new content to make this show exciting and fun each and every week. And normally, every year at AWT, I just walk away with so much material. Now, we're going to have all these white papers and speakers, and I might not be in a particular room, and you saw the best presentation that you can think of. Well, folks, reach out to me. Say, Trace, you need to have this person on the podcast that gave a presentation at AWT, because I'm not in all of the presentations. And even if you saw it, maybe you're a little selfish, you're like, hey, I saw it, I don't really need to listen to it on the podcast. You got to think about your other fellow Scaling Up Nation members, but maybe you're not. So if you want to be selfish, here's this selfish reason to introduce that person to me or get that information to me. Well, folks, there's no time limit on this podcast. I think you all remember I had people on the podcast, and I will chop them up into other episodes, and we might speak 3 hours on a topic in different episodes. So there is so much more that they can say around that topic. Maybe they left out all this information about how they gathered their data, and that's important so you truly understand what their paper was about and how they got the information that they presented on. Maybe there was a whole nother segment that they wanted to report on, but they had to chop it out because there was only so much time. Most presentations are half an hour, and they have to be introduced, and then there's Q&A at the end. So what does that leave? Maybe 20-ish minutes? So there is just so much information that we can help unpack on this podcast. So if you see that paper, make sure you're getting that information to us, because I want to make sure that I bring all of the best information to you. And I'm going to be doing the same thing. So if I find a speaker that's just doing a great job, and I think the Scaling Up Nation needs to be introduced to them, I'm going to be doing that, but I'm only going to be in so many presentations, because I think 3 or 4 are going on at the same time this year. And talk about a beautiful venue. Oh my gosh, the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs, Colorado. That's just going to be amazing. we're going to be inside a lot, but try to get outside because that's just going to be an amazing venue. Now, a lot of people are coming in early. They're coming in for the business owners meeting. That's taking place on Tuesday, the 11th. So if you are a business owner and you want to attend, you're going to get so much information up and above the regular conference that you're going to be able to use within your business. So if you're able to come a day early, make sure that you attend this. You will not regret it. I'm looking at the schedule now. Great speakers, great content. And you're actually going to hear from somebody that we heard from the Scaling Up H₂O podcast a couple of weeks ago, and that was 447, episode 447. Randy Fargen, she's going to be introducing the Culture Index at the Business Owners Meeting. Every time she speaks, I learned something new, so I can't wait to hear from her and all of the great speakers that are going to be there, not only at the Business Owners Meeting on Tuesday the 11th, but also the entire conference. And folks, there are going to be so many people at the conference. And one of my favorite things to do, everything's my favorite thing to do at the conference, but I love walking the exhibition hall. There are so many people in that hall. There are people that have solutions to problems that you are dealing with, and you can talk with them. And maybe you don't even know you're having a problem, and now you're talking about what you're doing day to day or a particular thing you're having an issue with, and they say, we've got a solution for you for that. And you're like, I didn't even know that was something you could solve. So make sure that you take time to walk the exhibit hall, and it can be daunting. So this is the advice that I give people if they're going for the first time, or maybe they need some sort of process to do the exhibit hall, is that you start at a particular location. Now, everybody starts at the beginning, so maybe you do a different route. You can do it however you want, but I encourage you to talk to everybody in that room. Go to every single booth, introduce yourself, and find out what it is that they do. You never know, maybe a year from now, maybe a couple months from now, maybe, I don't know, pick a time frame from now, you are going to have a need that one of those people can help you with. And you're going to remember, I met a person that does this. And now that's the hardest part when you have a problem is who can you talk to? Who can help you solve it? And now you're going to have hundreds of people that you met and you know what they do, so you can shorten that process. So make sure you have some sort of plan to talk with everybody, and then go back and have deeper conversations with the ones that can help you right now. I think that's one of the best and easiest things to process all of the stimulus that's going on in the exhibit hall. So if you don't have a plan, maybe that can be your plan as well. And while you're doing that, you are going to see so many people walking around with buttons. You're going to have the opportunity to introduce yourself, and now you've got an ally to walk around with and have conversations about things. And let me tell you, when you're walking around with people, there is just another dimension to that exhibit hall because they can share things with you, you can share things with them. They might ask a question at a particular booth that you didn't think to ask, and now you've got all these other questions or all these other thoughts that you can bring into the conversation. I'm telling you, the button is magic. It is convention magic. Make sure you have that magic button. Now, there are going to be so many exhibitors at the AWT next week. I want you to look out not only for those buttons, but we've also created a poster to let you, the Scaling Up Nation, know that the sponsors that we hear from each and every week on the Scaling Up H₂O podcast are there, and we've created a poster to allow you to know that they are a sponsor of this podcast. Now, let me give a huge thank you to all the sponsors of this podcast, because we could not do what it is that we do at the quality that we do it without your help. Now, this is a free resource, and the reason that we're able to do so much and keep it free are because of all of these people that are exhibiting next week that are helping the Scaling Up H₂O podcast. So look around for these posters. They're going to be displaying it. And if you would, thank them for me for supporting this show. Trust me, we would not be able to do what we do, especially at the level that we do it, without their help. One of those sponsors is North Metals. They're going to be at booth 212, and they humbled me a couple of weeks ago. They did an article about my origin story, and that was just fantastic. It was a great experience, and they are going to have copies of their magazine with that article in it at their booth at 212. Dave told me that he's bringing like thousands of these things, just like the buttons. He doesn't want to bring them back. So I would love it if you would stop by their booth, get a copy of that. And it was sure fun doing that interview. I hope you enjoy reading it. And there's just so much going on this year. Now, I shared this on an earlier episode. There was a particular time over the last couple of years where I would propose that I speak on a particular topic, and it was on how to create procedures in your water treatment business. For 4 years, that got passed over, and it just didn't get picked up. So this year, I submitted it again, and I really enjoy speaking at AWT. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put 4 more abstracts in. I'm going to put 3 more abstracts in for a total of 4. Well, Nation, they picked every single one of them. So that's a great treat for me, but that means I am speaking 4 different times at the AWT. So I'm hoping to see you in the audience. I'm hoping that you're going to be wearing your button. I'm hoping you're going to come up to me. You're going to grab some more buttons to bring home from your team. But here are your opportunities to hear me speak, and hopefully one of these topics is going to allow you to bring something home with you to start doing in your business from the convention next week. So on Friday the 14th at 2 p.m., I'm going to be delivering a presentation called Crafting Compelling Presentations, Strategies for Engagement and Impact. Now, Nation, I love speaking to audiences, and I've studied that, and I've studied people that do that. And I'm going to spend that half an hour telling you about things that I've observed or things that I've read or things that I have actually practiced. So the next time you give a presentation to a customer or wherever it is, you can use some of these tips and tricks and techniques to make that presentation better. And then right after that, I'm going to be talking in the same room at 2:30 on a paper that is called Reframing Your Company Message, Starting with Why Instead of What. That is straight from the book, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's something that I use in my sales presentations and sales trainings. When we talk about the why we do what we do and not the what we do with what we do, it changes the entire message. It gets your customers or your potential customers to lean in, and it sets you apart from everybody else. So I'm going to be telling you all about that so you can start doing that in your company. And then on Saturday, I'm speaking again. Now, one of my favorite topics to train on is Pat Lencioni's Working Genius. And I am a licensed facilitator with the Working Genius. I've taught several AWT companies the Working Genius. It's one of the foundational items within the Rising Tide Mastermind. And I want to introduce that to you. I know that this is a tool that will help your entire team, and it will actually help how you interact with your family, how you interact with other people. So I'm going to be sharing what the working genius is and how you can use that in all those different areas that I just mentioned. So that's going to be at 8 a.m. on Saturday. And then right after that, I'm going to be giving the presentation that started all of this, the one that got rejected for the last 4 years. And that one is the power of process in water treatment efficiency. And I truly believe if you can document the 60 to maybe 75% of the stuff that has to be done or there's going to be a problem, that is the stuff that's going to get you in trouble. You don't have to worry about it because now you've got a process for it. Everybody's doing it the same way. And the rest of that percentage, you're thinking, how come that's not in the process? Well, that's because you hire smart people. You're a smart person yourself. And the rest is for them to figure out and make even better because they are good industrial water treaters. So I want to be telling you all about that, how to kind of break things down, how to form your processes, because if everybody's doing something differently, how do you know if someone's doing it right? And if somebody's doing it wrong, how do you know that? And if you want to change something, how do you know you're really making the change? So we're going to talk about all of that stuff in the abstract that started it all, the power of processes. So that's going to be the last one that I give on Saturday at 9 a.m. I am just so excited about next week. I get a lot of opportunities to speak with you, and I hope that I get to see you. I'm going to get lots of information next week that I'm going to be able to share with you with the podcast. And Nation, it's all about the AWT. It's all about improving the industrial water treatment industry. And I even know some things that are going to be celebrated next week that I'm not at liberty to share with you right now, but I will share with you next week. And I am so excited about that. Now, next week when you listen, you'll know exactly why I'm so excited, but I can't talk about it now. But something I can talk about is our interview. And our interview is Mike Bourgeois, and he was president of the AWT. And we're going to be talking about things that you may not know that the AWT is doing. You're going to learn about that, and you're going to learn about how they are improving how we interact with the entire industry. My lab partner today is Mike Bourgeois of Chemco Products Company. Also, he's a past president of the Association of Water Technologies and the AWT's current RTO Committee chair. Mike, welcome to the Scaling Up H₂O podcast.
Thank you, Trace. Appreciate you asking me to be here.
Absolutely. We've got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about the AWT, but I especially want to talk about your current role. And I think a lot of people don't know about the other organizations that AWT partners with. So we've got a big show today. Mike, let me ask, if you don't mind, can you tell the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
So as you said, I work at Chemco Products Company. I'm the company's operations manager. I guess you could say I'm the VP of technical operations. So I'm running transportation, logistics, purchasing, lab, R&D, manufacturing, shipping and receiving, all of those sorts of functions that operate behind the scenes of a typical water treatment company. Didn't start out in this role, like many people in your audience. I carried a test kit in a tool bag. I've been in this industry 33 years. If you count treating water and my time in the Navy before this, that'd be 40 years. But at the AWT, I'm the Related Trade Organization Committee Chair and a Related Trade Organization Liaison for the AWT to a number of different trade organizations. And so I guess that's what we're here today to talk about.
And we are going to talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit about your career in the Navy. Of course, what you are allowed to talk about. What did you actually do in the Navy, and what led you into water treatment?
When I graduated high school, I raised my right hand, enlisted in the U.S. Navy. And after a while, they said, hey, look, let's send you to college. You go get a degree and then come back as a commissioned officer. So the contract that I signed was that, hey, I get to be a civilian for 4 years. And if I graduate, great, I get commissioned as an ensign. If not, I go back in the Navy doing what I was doing before. So very motivated to graduate from college. And I got a degree in physics and decided, hey, how can I put this to best use? And I became a submarine officer, nuclear powered submarine officer. You've talked to a couple of Navy nukes at this podcast before. So same story. And when I decided that I was going to resign my commission and leave the Navy, I said, hey, what is it out there that I could do that can use the same skills and training that I learned? I didn't want to be a physicist, so technical sales seemed to be the answer that checked most of those boxes, and water treatment seemed like a good fit. Some of the skills that you learn in the Navy. So I fell into it, frankly.
That's how it happens. We're either born into it or we fall into it. Everybody has a different story.
Who goes to school and says, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a water treater? No one knows.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. Mike, what got you involved with AWT?
I started working for a small local water treatment company, and they were members of the AWT and participants to some degree, but not really super active. And someone said, hey, maybe we can convince the boss to send us to this AWT convention thingy, or maybe some technical training. And so we attended, a couple of us attended, and it turned out to be really a great thing. So next thing you know, some of us pursued the CWT designation. Some of us made it, some of us didn't. And then it was, hey, boss, gotta go so I can maintain my certification, collect those CEUs so I don't have to retake that test again, because that was a tough thing. So then started attending convention and technical training. And Angela Pike, God bless her soul, grabbed me in the bar and over drinks and said, how'd you like to join a committee, the boiler committee, or actually it was the certification committee is looking for people. Her and the certification committee chair grabbed me, roped me in, and then, that started down that path.
It's hard to say no to Angela.
I couldn't figure it out at the time. Maybe I was a couple beverages in, don't know.
I don't think it would have mattered.
Exactly.
So I mentioned before, you are a past president of this organization, but you are also a current technical trainer. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Trace, unlike you, I'm very new to the technical training and still earning my bones, if you will. This was my first year as a technical trainer. I took over for Jay Farmery on the health and safety, and then I also participated in the ASSE 12080 training. Both of those things I found extremely satisfying. It's something that I like to do. It's one of the things that I'm very passionate about. As a young water treater, learn the hard way. So, I'm very motivated to see if I can teach young people up and coming in this field to not make the same mistakes that I made. Also through my career, even today, I encounter aha moments, those things where you're like, oh, gee, that's how that worked. I always assumed this, but it's actually that. And those aha moments are kind of joyous in some way, if you think about it. And so I like to transfer those little bits of joy over to the young men and women who I encounter who work at Gemco or at AWT member companies. I get a lot of joy from that. I think that's something that motivates a lot of us that volunteer at AWT.
Well, my math class follows your regulatory class. And so I was in the audience and I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you.
Well, Mike, your current position is you are the RTO Committee Chair. What the heck is an RTO and why should our members care about it?
RTO stands for Related Trade Organization. And like AWT, which is also a trade organization, there are other trade organizations out there that overlap with the goals and missions of AWT. They're dealing with water, maybe they're dealing with chemicals, maybe they're dealing with transportation, maybe they're dealing with regulatory issues. In any event, some of these organizations, and a large number of them, are working to achieve the same aims that we are. Maybe that's with respect to Legionella legislation or regulations or rules or just the health-related outcomes. If you think about it, what are we trying to do out there with respect to Legionella? I know our company is just trying to improve health-related outcomes. We don't want anybody to become sick from a system that we're treating. That's the ultimate goal. So these other trade organizations, and you can think of them like the Cooling Technology Institute, ASHRAE, ABMA, American Boiler Manufacturers Association, or any of the other ones that we're going to talk about today. They overlap with the things that we're doing. And so it really is incumbent upon the AWT members to be informed of what's going on at those organizations. And if we can, to assist them in achieving their aims and goals in a way that helps AWT member companies to achieve our aims and goals. And the idea is that our liaisons, their chief aim is to make sure that the AWT member companies are taken care of and that their voice is heard. Whether that's a water treatment company or a supplier, we don't care. It's all about making sure our members are properly served.
So there's an AWT volunteer member that is a liaison to each one of these related trade organizations.
Absolutely. So currently we're collaborating with maybe 10 organizations on a very formal basis. And there's another 4 to 6 on an informal basis. And what I mean by formal and informal is, in a formal basis, the board of directors has decided that we're going to appoint this person and we're going to be actively engaged with this trade organization. We're going to attend their trade shows and conventions. We're going to attend their committee meetings. And then there's other ones that there is not yet a relationship or a clear path forward for collaborating with them. So we don't have a formal relationship, but we have members who are maybe participating in those organizations, just keeping tabs on them and reporting back to the board the activities and goings on. So, I'd be happy to talk about the 10 that we're formally allied with and those 4 to 6 that we're sort of informally, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what they are.
Well, first off, I'm going to talk about the trade organization and the AWT volunteer that's participating in that, because I think it's very important. So the first one I want to talk about is Joe Hannigan, and he's the AWT's liaison to the AWWA, the American Water Works Association, and ASDWA, the Association of State Drinking Water Administrators. So these are 2 relatively similar organizations. The AWWA is mostly the utilities, and they are a standards writing organization. They're heavily partnered with another outfit, WEF, Water Environment Federation. And maybe some of the listeners out there have cracked open a book, The Standard Methods for the Examination of Water and Wastewater. AWWA and WEF have collaborated together to publish that book. So that's something that's probably in a lot of labs' bookshelves. ASDWA, the Association of State Drinking Water Administrators, those are mostly government administrators. But where these 2 overlap is they're both focused on improving the water quality and availability of water. That's their real charter. And one of the areas with AWWA that Joe Hannigan is particularly dialed in at is their Premise Plumbing Committee. So AWWA is the source for the water that many of our clients are using. Certainly you're using in your home. It's coming from some waterworks, publicly owned or municipally owned treatment works or privately owned treatment works. Well, they want to make sure that that water is of sufficient quality that it's not corroding the pipes in our buildings and homes. And so there's a lot of collaboration with others in industry, whether it be engineers or designers or end users, clients, or us in the water treatment world. So we have something to say about that. And Joe's doing a tremendous job. And of course, there's ASHE, the American Society of Healthcare Engineers, Reed Hutchinson, who's also a board member. He's a sort of a new liaison here, and he's just getting his feet wet and just beginning to learn who the players are at ASHE. His last meeting, which he just got back from, was very successful. We were able to make some really good contacts and have some potential for some collaboration with ASHE. So very excited about that. Steve Jobin, he's the liaison to the American Boiler Manufacturers Association. This is what the name describes it. It's boiler manufacturers and related suppliers. If you're making burners and supplying those to an up, you might be a member of ABMA. Chemical companies can be ABMA. Now, the problem is there are almost no chemical suppliers who are members of ABMA. And the ABMA members have told us, this is like hocus pocus and black magic, this water treatment stuff. And many of them don't have great stories to tell about success with water treatment. As you can imagine, Trace, you probably experienced some of these issues where, you're telling the client, this is what you should be doing. And sometimes they don't, and they have not a great outcome. So we're very excited about the ABMA. That's kind of a new one. We always had an RTO liaison with them in the past, but we weren't really able to make any headway. The board decided to drop it. Steve went and attended their summer expo in 2024 and came back with some glowing information, called me up on the phone and said, hey, we got to be a member of this thing because of these special things that are happening. And also Paul Genest, there's an individual at ABMA, one of the leaders is a woman, and they have their own WOW, if you will. They're women of water. They have a women of boilers, if you will. And we were trying to get her, Nancy Simino, on a panel discussion at the last convention. Scheduling couldn't work out, but we're really trying to make good inroads there. CTI, Cooling Technology Institute, that's myself. Patsy Root at the CDC, Centers for Disease Control. We have Brian Leota at the Water Environment Federation. That's a great organization, mainly dealing with wastewater issues, wastewater treatment issues. And then, of course, what many people, old timers, might know is NACE. They merged with the Association of Material Protection and Performance, AMPP. The paint and coating guys merged with the corrosion engineer guys, NACE, to form this one association. Jay Farmery is heading up the liaison for that. And then, of course, the trusty old Water Quality Association, and Chuck Hamrick is the AWT's liaison to that. No discussion of RTOs would be complete without a shout out to Bill Pearson. He, of course, used to liaise with both the CTI, Cooling Technology Institute, and ASHRAE, and he gave up CTI, said, Mike, you do that, which I'm doing, but he kept ASHRAE, and I don't think there's a more effective RTO.
Yeah, he was a voting member for 188.
Yep. The AWT member companies owe a lot to Bill and the behind the scenes work, dedicated work that he's done. I can't say enough about him and his efforts. On an informal basis, my company is a member of the Alliance for Chemical Distributors, ACD. So that's one of those informal things. There's a lot of legislative affairs stuff that goes on behind the scenes with the ACD. And so I'm able to really coordinate with the Leg-Reg committee. I serve on that committee and bring some of that to them. I'm also the informal liaison to the UK's Water Management Society. So there's been some great collaboration with them. Mainly right now, we're sharing articles from the analysts with them for their publication. They've concentrated mainly on Legionella controlled and building certifications, operator certifications around those types of things. But they'd like to get back into more of a traditional water treatment world, corrosion and scale inhibitors. And they're really looking to potentially collaborate with us with the CWT. So that's one of my dreams. Could you imagine, Trace, if the CWT was cross-Atlantic?
I know we have members across the pond, but that would be great if that was written into standards over there.
That would be great. I think, after we do the ANSI accreditation, maybe we can pursue the BSI. They're Britain's version of the ANSI. Of course, Joe Hannigan at the EPA, he's helping us out a lot. And then Jay Farmery steps in for us at the ASTM and ASTM International. So I want to shout out to all of those people. They all do, workman's work. They're carrying that tool bag out there and preaching the gospel of AWT, if you will.
Now, Mike, how they go to the meetings, they go to the trade shows of these organizations, how do they get the information back to the AWT and then ultimately to the AWT member?
Well, in the past, before there was a committee, and the committee's only a couple of years old, in the past, it was really informalized and the information didn't always make it back to the board. And back in the day, we used to have an opportunity for the RTOs to give a report at convention. Well, the convention schedule is so jam-packed, there really is no more time for that. So in between when it got dropped from convention and we picked up the RTO committee to formalize this, a lot of the back and forth was lacking. There was not a real great vehicle to communicate what these guys had learned. And they were communicating with the board on an informal level. So the board decided, let's create this committee and let's share what we learn at these different events that happen throughout the year and funnel that all up through the committee directly to the board of directors with regular updates, and also synchronize what we're doing. And oddly enough, what you'll find is that many of these organizations are very involved in Legionella control issues, pathogen control issues, whether it be AWWA, ASHDWA, AWT, CTI, ASHRAE. All of those organizations are heavily invested in Legionella control. So there's going to be a lot of overlap. And that allows us the opportunity to say, hey, well, this organization wants to do this particular thing. How can we step in to make sure that AWT members' interests are protected and that it's actually achievable by an AWT member? In other words, why create a regulation? Why create a rule? Why create a standard if no one can achieve the standard? And who is better at saying, hey, this is achievable than an AWT member company?
You mentioned ABMA earlier. You said we always had a relationship with them, but recently we've rekindled that to make it even stronger. And they were in attendance at this year's technical training. Why were they in attendance?
With our collaboration with ABMA, we were looking for areas of collaboration. We invited them to our technical training because we said, hey, many of your members have approached AWT member companies at the Summer Boiler Expo and said, we don't know anything about water treatment. And it's all hocus pocus. It's black box stuff. And maybe it's working, maybe it's not working. We don't know. We'd like to learn more about it. Part one. Part two is they wanted to create this new show called a Boiler Expo every summer of a even year. So 2024 was the first one. 2026 is going to be the second one. And this is going to be designed around not boiler manufacturers, but boiler operators, boiler owners, boiler purchasers, people who are specifying boilers. Maybe a hospital chain, a corporate engineer who buys boilers, who specifies boilers, any of those kind of people. They want those people to attend this Boiler Expo. And they said, well, one of the things that we need to concentrate on would be water treatment. Why would boiler operators want to come to a Boiler Expo unless they can learn about the intricacies of boiler treatment? We said, hey, we're perfectly happy to talk about boiler treatment. We proposed some topics and we said, why don't you come to some of our technical training and see what AWT members are all about, see what we're doing behind the scenes to train our people so that you can get an appreciation for that. And it was also an opportunity for the two leaders within the groups to get together to make sure, on a face-to-face level, we're all heading in the same direction. So we saw it as a great opportunity. AWT is now serving as a member of their Boiler Expo steering committee. We've conducted site visits to the next locations where the Boiler Expos are going to be held. We've established a half day of training on the first day of the Boiler Expo that all deals with water treatment. We're going to be talking about 4 particular topics. One of them is going to be the economics of boiler treatment. The next one is going to be feedwater conditioning. The best treatment for boilers is pre-treatment, right? We're going to talk about boiler water side related failures. And then we're going to talk about regulations surrounding boilers, particularly steam regulations, whether it be FDA, USDA. We're going to be talking about kosher, halal. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things around boiler water quality and the regulations and standards around that.
Before we dive deeper into our interview, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Scaling Up Nation, are you ready to take your water treatment business to the next level? Scranton Associates is your key to growth. As a fourth-generation business, they bring innovation and expertise to every blend. Their commitment to quality and precision ensures that your products will meet the highest standards in the industry. With Scranton Associates, you're not just getting a supplier, you're gaining a partner invested in your success. From custom liquid blends to specialized powder formulations, They have the capabilities to meet all of your water treatment needs. Don't miss the opportunity to work with a company that's been creating solutions for over a century. Visit scalinguph2o.com/Scranton and see why professionals choose Scranton Associates for their blending needs. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Scranton. Scranton Associates. We don't just blend, we create solutions. Be sure to stop by booth 500 to see Jill and the rest of the team at Scranton Associates at the AWT Annual Convention. Let's jump back in right where we left off. Now, I would be willing to bet that most listeners today are surprised to hear about the relationships that the Association of Water Technologies has with these other organizations. If they wanted to tune in further and learn more, where could they find information about like what you're talking about right now?
Well, right now, we're not really good at communicating that. This is going to be the first time that we're really sort of introducing this 2-year-old committee, if you will. RTO liaisons, as you know, being a past president, have been around forever, and that work has been going on behind the scenes. But if they wanted to participate in our committee calls, they're welcome to join. I'm thinking about, having something in the AWT's Analyst magazine, sort of to recap on a quarterly basis, what are the events that AWT handed and where we're going. The problem with saying too much is that if we say there's the potential for us to collaborate with this organization doing this, and then that doesn't become fully realized, then people might be disappointed in that. But sometimes we propose things to them. The other trade associations propose things to us. We're not able to hammer out an understanding, a memorandum of understanding or agreement that formalizes this. And I don't feel comfortable personally dedicating AWT member volunteer hours to something that the AWT members as a whole aren't going to get anything out of.
That makes sense.
For instance, the first memorandum of understanding we ever hammered out with another trade organization was one that we did with the Cooling Technology Institute. And this was following a meeting that I attended, a committee workshop meeting, where the Cooling Technology Institute writes and develops water treatment related guidelines. They write standards associated with the thermal performance for cooling towers, for noise performance in cooling towers. But on the water treatment side, they don't write standards, they write guidelines, not formalized standards, not ANSI standards, if you will, but guidelines around water treatment. And as a water treater attending these things, I kind of said to myself, gee, AWT ought to be participating in these guidelines. First of all, we ought to know about them so that maybe we can use them. Second of all, we ought to be participating in crafting these guidelines. And interestingly enough, the Water Treatment Committee chair approached me and said, hey, we need help with some of these. We don't have enough volunteers. And I said, well, AWT be happy to volunteer, but we would like to have co-authorship. We would like to have it to be a co-authored document authored by CTI and AWT. And we'd like to offer it to AWT members for the same price as a CTI member. And we developed a memorandum of understanding, came to an agreement, and now we have a number of guidelines that are being written. There's one that's in ad hoc review right now that is the co-authored document by AWT and CTI. So as soon as that document is available, we're going to put an announcement in the AWT Analyst magazine and, a place where AWT member companies can go get that document. And interestingly enough, it's about oxidizing-biocide. AWT member companies developed 2 chapters associated with oxidizing-biocide that weren't in the original document. We wrote the chapter on hydrogen peroxide, and we wrote the chapter on peracetic acid.
That's fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah. Very happy about that. So that was that sort of became the model for how we're going to approach other organizations. And we've used that model across the board to basically become more proactive. How many times have you sat there and read the news that this organization is going to come up with this standard and it deals with water treatment, and you're thinking to yourself, gee, where was the AWT in that? And that's my feeling as well, is we are reacting to these things oftentimes in the past rather than being proactive. And so now our goal is to become more proactive, to go out there and become more active in participating in the development of these guidelines.
The AWT takes a village to operate. We're always looking for volunteers. If this has piqued someone's interest, do you have some volunteer needs as a RTO liaison or a committee?
For sure. First of all, if we're developing guidelines with CTI in particular, they're always developing new guidelines. And so my approach has always been to go visit with the Cooling Water Subcommittee chair. These are the projects going on. Is there anybody in your committee that would like to participate? And that's been very fruitful. We've gotten a number of people to participate. We have probably, I think, 4 or 5 guidelines in process right now that are going to be co-authored by AWT and CTI. And so I would say that that's the best vehicle to get involved. As far as becoming an RTO liaison, what we're looking for is someone with some very particular attributes. The liaison needs to be highly motivated to amplify AWT. That needs to be part of their DNA. They need to be thinking about AWT members in general, not just their company. Their character needs to be designed around that philosophy. They need to understand that they're not there pitching their company. They're talking about what AWT member companies can do for this organization. And they need to be thinking about what that organization can then provide to AWT members in return. So that needs to be an attribute they need to have. They also need to have an innate belief that what is good for the AWT is good for their company and is good for their clients and is good for our industry. And if they can be operating within that framework, that's a good attribute. And probably more importantly, or as importantly as the other two, they should have a good knowledge of the AWT, how it works, who does what, how do things get done, what are the different committees working on currently, what might they be willing to work on in the future, and they need to understand what are the AWT's missions, goals, and strategies. What do AWT member companies need, and how can this organization that they're liaisoning with fill those needs?
So if somebody's listening out there and they say, that's me, what do you want them to do next?
I want them to volunteer for an AWT committee. Unfortunately, or if they're out there in their day-to-day and they see another trade organization that they think, is aligned with AWT's needs in some way, or is going to be impacting the way AWT member companies are having to operate in the world, whether that be product development, whether that be raw materials, whether that be transportation, whatever AWT member companies, whatever affects an AWT member company, if they're a member of that trade organization, bring it up to a board member, bring it up to me, bring it up to another RTO liaison if you happen to know who they are. Just ask the question. One of the things I would say to the people out there listening, if you're a member of the AWT, and if you're not, you ought to be an individual member for sure, but liaisons are people who need to be willing to get stuck in. Trace, have you ever been to a AYSO soccer field or something and the ball's skittering around? It's much different than Premier League soccer where everybody's passing the ball gracefully. In AYSO, these little kids, they're running around, they're kicking the ball, it's getting intercepted, and there's a little group of people glommed around the ball and they're all kicking it at the same time, trying to, and you just tell these kids, go over there and get stuck in, get kicking that ball. Maybe you'll get it out and you can run with it and score. The AWT liaisons need to be those kind of people, but more importantly, AWT needs you. If you're a wallflower, I would say get stuck in, go volunteer. It's going to pay huge dividends for the company that you work for and for you. And it's going to pay huge dividends for your clients because the things that you are going to learn, you're going to take back to your company, you're going to take back to your clients, and you're going to improve, whether it be a health-related outcome with Legionella or pathogen control or any of those other issues, or it's going to improve the results at your account. I'm a firm believer in that. I know because it's happened to me.
Mike, can you describe a time when collaborating with another trade organization has led to a breakthrough?
Well, I have a couple of good examples, and 2 come to mind. The ABMA. AWT members play an important role in educating industry and operators in the importance of water treatment and the safe operation of boilers. We do that with our clients all the time, reducing the cost of operation, conserving resources like water, natural gas, and things like that. So AWT and ABMA are going to be rolling out a joint committee to look at updating or modifying or improving their boiler water guidelines. Now, on the AWT side, we've already started this process. We've formed a small task force of smart AWT members, all volunteered to get to work on what we think the feedwater boiler water guideline should say. The preparations for the first meeting are underway, and the task force members are going to be invited to participate. But the goal is to take the ABMA boiler water guidelines, which maybe as a young man you grew up with. I certainly did. And they need to be updated. Some members have told me, some AWT members have said, hey, we need to look at these silica limits because maybe those aren't so great. Maybe the alkalinity limits, maybe the conductivity limits. There's some new technologies, whether it be filming amines or whether it be tannins or some of the other things out there that maybe we need to bring into the real world. So we're really excited about that. That then could result in a new boiler water guideline that we all can use for our customers and clients, co-authored by AWT and ABMA. Now, the eventual goal then, Trace, would be how do we pursue this and get the ASME involved? Because the ABMA, frankly, has probably dropped their guidelines. They want to refresh them, want to get them going, but they've kind of ceded that ground to ASME. And ASME does an excellent job. And I think we want to incorporate some things into the ASME guidelines. So that would be, rather than have competing guidelines, why don't we just have one set of guidelines?
I love that.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that. Of course, the co-authored documents with the CTI. But I would say Reed Hutchinson, just returning from the ASHE conference that he just came back from, there's the potential that we AWT could be collaborating with ASHE on writing some guidelines around pathogen control, building water systems, hospital water systems, healthcare water systems. So these are the types of things that AWT needs to do in the future and that we are doing through this new RTO committee. Very excited about the work that the people in the committee are doing.
Well, Mike, this is our convention episode. This is going to release while people are traveling to the AWT convention. What are you looking forward to most this week?
What I'm looking forward to is I didn't go to the Broadmoor the last time they had convention. I forget what I was doing, but I didn't make it. Everybody's told me that if this is the one place you're going to go for a convention, this is the place to go. So I'm excited about that. I also am excited because there's a member of Chemco, a retired member of Chemco, one of the owners of the company. He's living out in the Denver area, so I'm excited about going and touching base with him. And I'm excited about seeing, frankly, all the papers. Like you, I'll be presenting. I'm presenting a paper on some new OSHA walk-around rule, some new rules that allow who can participate in these OSHA worker walk-arounds, these inspections, if you will.
Last year, we had the entire Women of Water Committee on the episode that's airing at the same time that your episode's airing on this year. And the talk of the committee was about the Women of Water. What do you want the talk of the show from this convention to be?
I would like the talk of the show to center around how do the individual members become involved in committees, get involved in AWT committees. You never know where it'll go from there.
And as people are walking around, how do they do that?
They can talk to anybody and say, what are the committees? And before you know it, they'll encounter a past president or a past board member or a current committee chair. Literally, just about anybody on the floor can direct them to someone and, go up and make the introduction. Go get stuck in, if you will.
That's the theme of today. Get stuck in.
There you go.
Mike, thanks for sharing all this great information about what you do and what the AWT does. I do have some lightning round questions for you if you're ready for those.
I am, I think.
All right, question number one. If you can go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as a water treatment professional, what advice would you give yourself?
Become an anesthesiologist. No, I'm kidding. get involved in AWT sooner, much sooner.
What are the last few books that you've read?
Wow. It's been a while. Mostly I've been reading or writing technical papers. So I've got 2 books in the hopper right now. I'm actually reading them both. One is Fossil Future by Alex Epstein. And one is, well, this one I've got in my hand. It's the Consensus on Control of Boiler Water and Feedwater Chemistry in Industrial and Institutional Boilers, put out by ASME. Of course, this is in relation to the project on the ABMA boiler water guidelines. So I've got those 2 in the hopper. Before that, the last one I read was probably Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand. And it's been too long since number 3. So it was probably Signature in the Cell, Stephen Meyer, or Cancer Ward, or something Lord of the Rings, or something by Grisham.
What were some of the technical papers you were working on?
Right now, working on putting the finishing touches on a post ad hoc review paper on the hydrogen peroxide. They wanted us to, for the CTI, wanted us to put in some testing. So I'm working on finishing up the different test methods for hydrogen peroxide. Wrote a technical paper along with 2 others for the boiler technical subcommittee for the analyst. It's a tutor article coming out about boiler regulations. So I think 21 CFR 173.310 for additives for boiler water in contact with food. So that's been 2 of the documents. And then, of course, all of the things that the people at Chemco are passing on to me to look at.
Mike, when Hollywood makes a movie about your life, who do you want playing you?
Who do I want playing me? Well, let's start with Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or, some of those guys. But no, have you ever seen the movie The End?
I don't know if I have.
It's an old movie, Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. So I wish it would be Burt Reynolds, but it would probably be Dom DeLuise.
Good choice. Good choice. Final question. You now have the ability to speak with anybody throughout history. Who would it be with and why?
Oh, shoot. I thought Pope St. John Paul my dad. I'll go with Lech Walesa. Amongst the cast of characters in that day, whether it be Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, Pope St. John Paul, the one person who played a huge outside role in that was Lech. He was the leader of a Polish trade union, Solidarity. And, my thought is always, what gave this simple electrician the thought that he could take on the Soviet Union? And really, his efforts were instrumental in bringing it down. And part of the reason I'm interested is when I was in college, I had a math professor who was a defector at the time from Poland. He worked on the Polish national volleyball team, and his job was to write a computer program to calculate where a player who could jump a certain height with a certain arm reach, where he was going to be able to place the ball to best effect versus the competition. And when they were traveling to another country to play in these international competitions, he literally just walked out of the hotel and showed up at the first. It was either a U.S. or British consulate. Anyways, he became a professor at the university under a different name and always used to talk about the goings-on back in Poland. And one of the stories he told was he held up this book with the Communist Manifesto. And he said, I received this in the mail last week. And he said, I just opened it. It was from Poland. And I thought, oh my goodness, the Polish secret police have found me. And they're telling me, he opened it up. It was this Communist Manifesto, and he thought for sure it was the secret police coming to get him, and that they were basically telling him in their kind of secret special way, we know who you are, we know where you are. And he opened it up, and inside was this cassette from his friends that they had recorded and were telling him all about things in Poland. So they had smuggled it out of the country within a copy of the Communist Manifesto and sent it to him through some sort of weird surreptitious means. And so I learned about Lech Walesa and others through that professor.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H₂O podcast. I want to thank you for your service to our country and all the work that you do with AWT.
Thank you, Trace. I want to thank you for this podcast. This is really the place to be for water treaters. And thank you for your service to AWT and everything that you do.
Well, Mike, thanks for sharing all of that. The AWT does so much for our industry, But a lot of us just don't know all of the things that they do. One of the things that I wanted this podcast to do for the industry is share things like AWT and other organizations, things that they are doing for all of us. So we know that they're doing them, but then also maybe there's something we can help with. Maybe we know something about something they're already doing, and now we can volunteer. We can help lighten the load. And speaking of volunteering, there is not going to be a shortage of work that needs to be done for the AWT over the next year. So if there is something that I can tell you that is just going to make your membership to AWT or any organization so much better, it is volunteering. And you're probably thinking you don't have time to volunteer. Well, early in my career, I was told I didn't have the time to not volunteer. And I didn't know what that meant, but I know what it means now. I want to tell you, I spent and I've given a lot of time to AWT. Now, what I've received back from the people that I've met, from the access to the knowledge of the people that I know from AWT, folks, that has paid me back 10 to 100-fold. And I would have never have known those people. I wouldn't have had a reason to had I not gotten involved and had I not started volunteering, doing the work that needs to be done for us to have an organization like AWT. Now, these people saw me volunteering, saw me working, and then when I needed help, they wanted to help me because I was helping the organization just like they were. So if there is something that you are interested in, go to the AWT Chillers Lounge. Let somebody know there that I really enjoy doing this. There's probably a need for that on one of the committees, and I know that's scary. Oh my gosh, I'm joining a committee. That's such a commitment. Well, folks, it's not as hard as you might be thinking, and the hardest step is getting it started, having that first conversation, and I hope so many of you start that conversation next week. And if it's too hard of a conversation, find somebody with a Scaling Up H₂O button and go over there and do it together. I told you, this button is magic. It can do so much for you during next week's convention. Make sure that you grab a button. And while you're walking around, you're going to meet all these people. Like I said, there are so many good friends that I know from AWT. Mike, who we just heard from, he is one of them. And as you heard, Mike is a trainer with the Association of Water Technologies, their technical training. And Mike does a presentation that kind of follows, I follow his. And then I was filling in for Frank LeCrone, the CEO of Aquaphoenix Scientific, and he wasn't able to make it, so he asked if I would give his water sample testing presentation. Honored to do that. It was a great presentation. I needed to make sure I was familiar with it. And then my friend also met through AWT. He's your friend too, Mark Lewis, been on the podcast multiple times. Mark Lewis took that presentation and he made it Mark Lewis style. He added some things to it, and what he added to it was he added Detective H₂O. And you all know that I love Detective H₂O. I know that you love Detective H₂O. So he created this interactive presentation that had recordings in it of James McDonald doing Detective H₂O. And you would essentially call on the black rotary phone, and after it rang 3 times, the detective picked up, and we had a conversation about some different testing issues. So it really added a fun spin to how that presentation was delivered. And Mike went after me on another day, and he was so gracious because he had so much information that he was going to share. He was talking about water management plans and Legionella. And of course, we have hours of presentation material that we have minutes to present in. And he was so gracious. He allowed me a few moments to introduce Detective H₂O himself, James McDonald, was able to come one day to the technical training. So I brought him up in front of the audience and I introduced him to everybody that heard Detective H₂O the day previous. And that cut into his presentation time. Mike did it anyway. He recovered brilliantly. You had no idea that he gave me probably 6 minutes of his presentation time. So Mike, once again, thank you for being so gracious with that. And thank you for all that you are doing with the AWT to help the industrial water treatment community. In addition to allowing me time to introduce James McDonald, he also allowed me to talk about Industrial Water Week, and he allowed me to talk about Legionella Awareness Month and all the information that we have on Legionella and waterborne pathogens on our Legionella page on our website. Folks, if you haven't been there, that is just a treasure trove of all the collections of things that our guests over the years have been able to share with us. It is a one-stop shop for you to pretty much research anything that's going on with Legionella, or at least take you to the next step. So he allowed me to talk about all that, and that was time taken out of his presentation. So once again, Mike, thank you for being so gracious and allowing me to do that. Nation, I hope you can hear in my voice how excited I am about next week. I am so excited about being at the AWT conference. I am excited about seeing you next week at the AWT conference. I know I'm going to come back with a lot less buttons because I'm going to give them to you. I know I'm going to come back with a lot more content for the next year of the Scaling Up H₂O podcast. And I know I'm going to come back with a lot more friends because I'm going to meet them next week. Folks, I can't wait to see you next week. Make sure you come by and say hi. I'm going to be walking around. Folks, have a great convention at AWT and have a great week, folks. Struggling to prepare for the Certified Water Technologist exam? Our Certified Water Technologist Prep course is here to help. Gain the confidence you need with comprehensive study materials and a 100-question practice exam. And the best part, we offer a free version to get you started. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and take the first step towards your certification today.